Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a ridiculous Karen created an HOA next to my farm property and then built a fence near my land to block me in. I showed her why you should never mess with a farmer. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. A woman who can only be described as a Karen moved into my neighborhood and before she even had time to fully unpack, started an HOA. She went around claiming how her old neighborhood had one and it created such unity and made it safer than even the police. Obviously, she was trying to make it seem like an HOA was the best thing invented since sliced bread to trick people that did not know the truth about it. My role during her entire escapade was actually non-existent because while she was rallying the community into electing her into a role she did not deserve and giving her money, I simply was not home. I was away from my farm for a few weeks and when I came back, I found something horrible waiting for me. Now, I also want to point out that I came back not alone, but with a couple of cows as well. So, not being able to get on my property was a big deal. A giant solid fence was blocking any access point to my property. This thing was way too tall to climb over and it even had barbed wire at the top. It was like a prison fence designed to make sure nobody could get out. The issue was that I couldn't get in and I was stuck and confused as hell to what happened. I was on my way to the town hall, still with the cows in the back because I couldn't just leave them, and when I was there I ran into Karen for the first time. She heard me talking about my farm and a fence being there. She was quick to talk over anybody else and explain things. Karen, oh, you mean that ugly old farm that nobody lives at? It was space just being wasted, so I filed the paperwork for the HOA to take it over. Me, what HOA? Cue the long explanation of who the hell she was and that she started an HOA in the neighborhood. Karen, I would love for you to join as well if you have property in this neighborhood. Me, did you not hear me before? I came here because a fence was put up blocking off my entire property. By the way, property that you admitted to blocking off. Karen, you were not there, and it was perfectly good land for the HOA to use. I was actually here to get it put in my name. Me, well, now you know it's mine. So, are you gonna tell me when that fence is coming down? Karen, it's not. This is a neighborhood for homeowners with nice jobs and families. The last thing it needs is a farmer causing the entire place to stink and teaching kids it's fine to not get an education. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing her say to me. If she had agreed to take down the fence and apologized, I would have been willing to give her a fresh start with me. To let it all be behind us, but that was the moment she solidified herself as a Karen, flat out refusing to give me back my property and led me onto it. The fact that she was doing all of this right in a town building made her seem even more insane to me. I wanted to say some choice words to her, but the person behind the counter finally came back with somebody to talk to me about the property. Karen took this opportunity to get the hell out of there because she knew I was not gonna be happy with what I heard. It being a small town, the man I was speaking to knew me and said he was shocked when Karen came in with paperwork to build the fence and take over my property. He apparently asked what happened to me and Karen claims she saw me pack everything up and just move away. Bold claim since she wasn't even living here when I went away for a few weeks. They apparently tried calling me, but I was the dumb guy that had their only contact as a landline phone. With me not answering and her having the paperwork they approved of, the fence being built and the property as being empty. I was freaking out because I really thought I was screwed here and she really just managed to steal my property for this HOA. I don't know much about legal matters, so I thought signed paperwork meant that there was nothing I could do. The man calmed me down and explained that she didn't have my property yet and I could get it back. The fence was put up to preserve the property and stop intruders from ruining it. The HOA couldn't touch it for about a year though, and during that time I had any opportunity to come back and file my claim to the land. My biggest issue was all important papers showing that I owned the property were in my house that I could not gain access to. New ones had to be ordered from the state and I had to wait for those to be mailed before I could send a letter to the courts. For those of you paying attention, you would remember that I had 2 cows and nowhere to put them. I spent the rest of the day driving to any farm I could to see if they had space to house my cows for free. One farm did, but I had to pay them and it was about a 40-minute drive away, which was not great with the current gas prices. Then I had to find somewhere for me to stay and ended up at a friend's house where I was also able to have the mail sent to, since even my mailbox was inaccessible due to the fence. It took 2 weeks to get everything and submit my claim. Things should have just stopped right there and I got my land back. But nope, Karen re-enters the story, filing her own claim that I don't really own the land. This meant we had to sit down with lawyers and somebody else from the court and get everything sorted. Finding a date for this meant another month and having to go somewhere else to sleep since my friend could not keep me any longer. It also meant more time I couldn't make income and spending my savings on housing the cows. My lawyer was fighting with the fact that I had all the right papers and had submitted within the year period, meaning Karen needs to remove the fence and allow me back on the property. Karen had her own papers that were drafts of a new HOA bill banning farms in the HOA. Her argument was that since the farm area was in a state of property limbo, that her bill could stop me from regaining ownership. Nobody could believe that she was this stupid, and the lawyers had to explain things to her several times that her policy would be illegal, that it was not even in effect. And yet it was just a draft she clearly came up with on the fly. Most importantly, I was not trying to regain ownership of my property because I had never lost it. I had just gotten screwed over by her. I told her with all the lawyers present that if she tried to interfere again and delay my property being returned to me, I was going to personally sue her, making her pay me back for lost wages and expenses from not having access to my property. Up until this point, she was protected by the stupid laws, but after this meeting, she would not be. I made it clear that each day the fence stayed up, I would be making sure that she paid out of pocket for it. The look on her face was one of pure fear, as it finally dawned on her that she was not winning this fight and I was gonna take the offensive soon. Within the next 12 hours, the fence was gone and I could finally bring the cows onto the property and make an income again. I'll admit that I held a grudge and made it clear every time I saw her since to be kind of nasty, asking her if she thinks I still smelled like a farmer or if she was ever getting that bill of her past. Karen was apparently fuming after the meeting with the lawyers. She couldn't believe that I, the pesky farmer, was able to reclaim my property so easily. Something had to be done, at least in her mind. In the middle of the night, Karen snuck onto my property with bolt cutters. She cut through the fence and made her way to my farmhouse. Using a crowbar, she pried open the door and went inside looking for any documents or valuables she could steal and destroy. Unfortunately for Karen, I had installed security cameras on my property after the whole fiasco. The next morning, I reviewed the footage and was shocked to see Karen breaking into my home. I immediately went to the police station and showed them the video evidence of Karen's crime. The police paid a visit to Karen and arrested her for breaking, entering, theft and destruction of property. She was indignant, insisting she had a right to be there since she was president of the HOA. The police were unsympathetic and hauled her off to jail. I heard that Karen's HOA board members were appalled by her actions and criminal charges. They held an emergency meeting and voted to remove her as president, distancing themselves from her erratic vendetta against me. At her court date, the judge sentenced Karen to 6 months in prison for her offenses. He also issued a restraining order preventing her from going near my property again. Karen was outraged apparently, but there was nothing she could do. She was led away in handcuffs, finally facing real consequences for her harassment and illegal behavior towards me. I was relieved to have my home and livelihood back, and I decided to invest in even more security measures in case Karen decided to target me again once released from jail. But for now, justice had been served. Karen's reign of HOA terror was over, at least for me. And the next one is titled, Neighbor Keeps Stealing My Packages from Porch, Calls Cops When Confronted. So I have lived in my suburban neighborhood for nearly 3 years now. It's a quiet little cul-de-sac with manicured lawns and friendly neighbors. Or so I thought. I work as a freelance graphic designer from home. The flexible schedule allows me to set my own hours, but it also means I rely heavily on package deliveries for supplies. My neighbor Ron, who lives across the street, is retired. He spends most days at home working in his vegetable garden while his wife is out running errands. Ron always seemed a bit standoffish, quick exchanges of hellos but little else. I had noticed him watching while I retrieved packages or worked in my front yard. Just subtle glances out of his window with a stone-faced expression. Still, I thought nothing of it at first, just a private, reserved neighbor. That changed a month ago when packages started vanishing from my front porch. At first I assumed it was typical porch pirates or lost deliveries. But after the 5th package went missing, my suspicions grew. The thefts always happened during weekdays when most people were at work. Whoever was taking them clearly knew my daily schedule. My mind instinctively jumped to Ron. Having no job to occupy his day, he had the perfect opportunity to monitor my coming and goings. I felt a surge of anger at the idea of him stealing from me right under my nose, but I knew I needed proof before making accusations. The next time I had a delivery scheduled, I made sure to stay home without letting on that my plans had changed. I watched through the living room window with a perfect view of my front porch. Then around noon I spotted the mail truck dropping off a large box. As soon as the truck departed, I saw Ron peering out of his window. After a few moments he emerged from his house and hurried across the street. Without hesitation, he grabbed the package and scurried back inside. I saw red. My normally calm demeanor gave way to outrage. How dare he steal from me after I had only ever been kind to him? I marched out my front door and pounded on his before I could calm myself down. The door swung open and there stood Ron holding my unopened package, eyes wide open. "Just what do you think you're doing with my package?" I demanded. Ron's face switched from shock to nonchalance. "Package? What are you talking about? I was simply bringing your delivery inside for safekeeping," he replied smoothly. I fought to keep my voice steady. "I saw you take that from my porch just now. That's outright theft." Ron scoffed. "You must be mistaken. Why on earth would I take your belongings?" At this point, my hands were shaking with anger. "Cut the act, Ron. I've had multiple packages go missing over the past month. And now I just witnessed you stealing this one. How dare you?" Ron's facade finally cracked. He shifted uncomfortably and mumbled, "Look, it was just a few boxes. I didn't think it was a big deal. Don't you order stuff every day anyway?" "Of course it's a big deal," I shouted. "That's my property and not yours to take as you please." Ron's nonchalant attitude only made me more furious. How could someone be so entitled? I demanded that he return every single package he had taken immediately. At first, Ron tried dismissing it at just a couple of boxes, but my unwavering glare made it clear that I was not backing down. He reluctantly retrieved 8 packages from his house and handed them over. As I inspected the torn boxes, Ron claimed that was all he had taken. Unable to prove if more were stashed elsewhere, I decided to let it go for now. I warned him that I better not catch him on camera near my porch again, or I would call the police. Over the next week, I kept close watch for any suspicious activity from Ron. He seemed to have gotten the message and left my packages alone. Then, one evening, I noticed a large box I had been expecting was missing from my porch again. Fury and disbelief coursed through me. Surely Ron would not dare to steal from me again after I confronted him. I marched straight over to his house, ready to make it clear his antics had to stop for good. Yet again, he feigned ignorance and shock at my accusations. As my frustration reached a boiling point, Ron dropped a bombshell statement. "I actually already contacted the cops about you harassing me," he said smugly. "I never laid a hand on your precious packages, but I don't appreciate false accusations." I stood there stunned into silence as a police cruiser pulled up. The officer approached me looking unimpressed. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked in an authoritative tone. I quickly explained the situation, the multiple stolen packages catching Ron red-handed and his outrageous denial. The officer listened before replying, "Well, right now it's your word against his. Unless you have evidence, I cannot take action based on accusations alone." I couldn't believe it. Ron's smug look made it clear that he knew I had no hard proof. As the officer left, Ron had the audacity to threaten filing a restraining order against me for continued harassment. Over the next 2 weeks, my blood boiled as packages continued to go missing from my porch. Ron clearly felt empowered knowing I had no recourse against him, but his false sense of security would soon come crashing down. I was more determined than ever to catch him red-handed on camera. I discreetly set up a video surveillance system aimed at my porch without Ron noticing. The next time I had a delivery, I made sure to order expensive electronics that would tempt him. Like clockwork, Ron snatched the boxes minutes after they were dropped off, his brazenness on full display thanks to my new security footage. Armed with crystal clear video evidence, I confidently approached the same officer to file a report. As he reviewed the recordings, his demeanor noticeably shifted from doubtful to alarmed. "You were right all along," he admitted. "This proves the theft without question." He thanked me for persevering in gathering evidence before issuing an arrest warrant for Ron. That same day, I gave a satisfied smile watching the police cruiser pull up as Ron was taken away in handcuffs. In the subsequent court case, Ron was sentenced to a year of probation and ordered to pay hefty fines after being found guilty of theft and filing a false report. As part of a civil suit, he also had to reimburse me for the cost of stolen packages and surveillance equipment. The judge sternly warned that any violation of probation would result in jail time for Ron. I realized after his public shaming and stern punishments, he would likely think twice before stealing from anyone again. As I walked out of the courthouse, I breathed a sigh of relief and satisfaction. The neighborhood would surely be safer without Ron's underhanded schemes. Justice had finally been served. Update to the story: I thought all the drama with my thieving neighbor Ron was over after all of this. Well, a few weeks later, packages once again started vanishing from my porch at odd times. My blood ran cold. The next morning, I anxiously reviewed the camera footage. To my shock, the video showed Ron brazenly swiping another delivery in plain sight. I felt simultaneous rage at his audacity and triumph having him caught again on camera. Marching over to Ron's house, I pounded on the door holding up the incriminating video. When he answered, I shouted, "Haven't you already learned your lesson? You were caught on camera stealing again." Ron scowled, his friendly facade dropping again. "Look, I need cash to pay those ridiculous fines the judge slapped me with for what? Taking a few little boxes? Quit your whining and mind your own business." I stood speechless at his complete lack of remorse before responding, "Absolutely not. I'm reporting you to the police again and I'll be recommending jail time since you are already on probation." Ron's expression turned icy. "You will regret this," he hissed before slamming the door in my face. A chill ran down my spine at the ominous threat, but I remained resolute. At the police station, the officer's eyes widened in recognition. "Back again already, huh? Don't worry, we'll take it from here," he assured me. A few days later, I was gardening in my front yard when an ear-piercing noise shattered the calm. I turned in shock to see every single one of my front windows shattered. Standing in Ron's front doorway across the street was him grinning maniacally, baseball bat in hand. He pointed at me, yelling, "Told you that you would regret it." Then he turned and ran into his house, slamming the door. My heart pounded as I raced inside to call the cops. This had gone way too far. Ron was clearly dangerous. Thankfully, an officer arrived in minutes to inspect the shattered windows. I showed him the baseball bat footage caught on my security camera and he grimly confirmed my fears that Ron was unraveling fast. While waiting for backup, the officer suddenly received an alert over his radio. A home invader was reported one street over. The description matched Ron. Within minutes, a dozen police cars swarmed the area as Ron was cornered trying to loot another unsuspecting neighbor's home in broad daylight. Finally faced with overwhelming evidence of his crimes, Ron snapped. He became violent and had to be forcibly restrained when found with a stash of stolen goods. I later learned that he was sentenced to several years in prison with no chance of early parole or probation. My neighbor's theft scheme had apparently spiraled into a one-man crime wave fueled by entitlement and greed. As Ron was escorted away in handcuffs, I finally felt safe and at peace again in my own home. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you enjoyed this story, please feel free to also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and others. You will get early access to new videos and even find exclusive content that you won't see anywhere else. Either way, the next one is titled "Who is the A-hole here?" So I recently moved into a property that backs up to an HOA neighborhood, my yard adjacent to about 4 of theirs. I'm not part of the HOA and the road to my house is a small private road and runs parallel to their private road. So when I first moved in, the county told me my trash pickup location was on their road. Mine's not got a good spot for a trash truck to turn around. After about 2 pickups, I find a note on my trash can with the usual HOA BS, aka cannot leave my can on their road, etc. Whatever, I take it to the end of my road and that works fine. Next I try and get hooked up with gas because electric heating is really expensive. The nearest gas line runs down their road. The utility is cool with it, but they block the construction. Fine, I install a tank and shortly thereafter get another note on my door saying the noise from the installation was disturbing and the tank is an eyesore. It's a buried tank and you cannot even see the cap from the HOA properties. That was that for around 6 months, except a few complaints of me mowing outside of HOA designated mowing hours, but within county hours, until a flatbed with a backhoe backs into my driveway. I walk out to see what's going on and apparently the sewer connection for the HOA runs under my property. Something is clogged and they need to tear the pipe up to get a good look. Long story short, apparently the builder had some handshake deal with the previous owner about that sewer line and gave up a few bucks to let them run it through the property. However, there's no easement on the deed, nothing in writing, and I sent the backhoe guy off. Next, HOA president comes and knocks on my door, tells me the sewer is causing backup in several of the houses and no one can use their toilets, shower, run sinks, etc. until it is fixed, and rerunning the sewer down their road instead of across my property is gonna cost millions they don't have and take months. I said something like, "Man, that sucks for you guys, hope you get it fixed soon. The sign says no trespassing though, so if you could keep off the property, I would appreciate it. Have a nice day." I got a letter from their lawyer with a lot of threats a bit later, but didn't see much to back them up legally. Figured they can take me to court if they want. They have some giant loud-ass mobile poop tank stuck in someone's backyard for the past 3 months and I see no signs of a new pipe. A few of the HOA residents stopped by and said the houses were basically unlivable with the pump, could only take 5-minute showers, only flush twice and cannot sleep from the noise. Also, it costs a lot and someone lost a house sale, etc. and they didn't have any part of the HOA stupidity other than living in it. I told them I feel for them, but that HOA has been a pain in my rear since week 1 and I'm not inclined to let them go driving construction equipment across and digging holes in a yard I worked pretty hard on after the way they've been treating me. They told me I was an a-hole. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know if you think OP is the a-hole here or not. I'm very curious about what you have to say. A comment on Reddit said, "Not the a-hole, you live in the county, not the HOA, there's no easement on your deed, so the sewer line is probably against code or even illegal. I have no idea how these property things work. The residents need to take action against the HOA for unlivable conditions they created by their shortcuts and under the table deals, not you." I cannot wait for this episode of the People's Court. I'm also not so secretly delighted by the karma over the gas line they denied you. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, tell them if they pay for the unnecessary gas tank they caused and let you connect to the gas line where you need it and let you have a designated space on their road for your trash day and pay for a professional remake of your garden after the work they need, you will consider it. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance and I hope to see you again tomorrow.